Hello everyone, I am PyroFalkon, a Let's Player on YouTube. This tutorial video will teach you how to create and use patch files with a PCSX2 version 1.7 PlayStation 2 emulator. If you just want the 5-minute TLDR version, skip to Part 8, full example of a patch file, start to finish. Please note that these steps apply only to version 1.7 of PCSX2, also known as the nightly builds of the emulator. Please check which version of PCSX2 you're running, because these steps definitely do not work for anything prior to 1.7. You will need some basic computer knowledge to follow these steps, such as how to navigate directories, move and rename files, and reveal the suffix of file names. I've tried to make the steps as easy as I can, but some personal knowledge and skill will be required that is beyond the scope of this video. I created a similar video on this subject for PCSX2 version 1.6, and I learned some lessons from the feedback to that video. Hopefully this will pre-answer some common questions and comments. First, this video is not an all-encompassing tutorial. I cannot know precisely what operating system you have. I'm a Windows 10 guy myself who has very little knowledge of how Mac OS and Linux operate, and I don't possess a Steam Deck. The steps in video capture here are from Windows 10 only because that's what I use. That said, the steps should still work. PCSX2 has the flexibility that I think it works on just about any operating system, and as long as you can browse directories and the PCSX2 menus, I think you'll be just fine. Just keep in mind that I use Windows-centric terms here. Second, the very nature of cheats and emulation means this entire thing can be unstable. Some games and some cheats will fail to work, and others may crash games on some versions of PCSX2 but not on others. If you have followed all my steps exactly, and it still doesn't seem to work, you may need some outside help for specific issues. The community is really knowledgeable. You can DM me on Discord once you join my server, but other Discord servers that specialize in PCSX2 may be better options. Third, this video specifically deals with patch files and their use. It will not cover any other features of PCSX2 such as widescreen fixes, camera mods, speed hacks, or pretty much anything else. Finally, I do not cover converting some codes to other codes. You may have heard the term OmniConverter, which was a program that could translate things like pro-action replay codes into other forms. I have used OmniConverter before, but nowadays you can usually find codes that are already properly formatted for PCSX2. There are still uses for OmniConverter if you're really deep in the emulation scene, but it's all beyond the scope of this video. Even though the file name is spelled PNACH, it's pronounced patch. I used to pronounce it PNACH. It's not. It's pronounced patch. A patch file is a text file that can be opened in any basic word editor, such as Notepad. It contains cheats for one specific game, formatted to read a specific variable in a game and overwrite it with a specific value. The syntax will look familiar to anyone who has ever used a Game Genie, Pro Action Replay, Game Shark, or other similar physical device. Because patch files are game-specific, you will need a different one for each game you play. You can generally find pre-made patch files for your chosen game with a quick Google search. Just type the name of your game, followed by the word patch, and your version of PCSX2. However, beware that when you download a patch file from a random message board post, it's possible it won't have the cheats you want, or maybe it's formatted incorrectly, maybe it has too many cheats, maybe it's for an older version of PCSX2. I'll explain why all of these could be a problem in Part 6. There aren't many websites that are repositories for patch files, but I tend to use gamehacking.org. It's not a user-friendly site, and it's too easy to get a bad patch file there. So Part 7 of this video is specifically about gamehacking.org. With a little patience and practice, gamehacking.org may be a good place for cheats that you can't find anywhere else. Patch files must be placed in a specific subfolder to work. If you installed PCSX2 in Windows 10 or later, it's probable that the cheats folder is in your documents directory, buried in several layers of subfolders. You can change which directory contains your active patch files by going to Settings in the menu bar of PCSX2, then Folders. By default, the name of the subfolder is simply Cheats. Most patch files you can find online are not in RAR or zip format, so they may be placed directly in your Cheats folder. You can even use patch files that were made for prior versions of PCSX2, but you will lose some features, such as being able to toggle the cheats within the PCSX2 engine. I strongly recommend that even if you find working patch files for older versions of PCSX2, you update them for the nightly builds. PCSX2 has very strict requirements for the names of patch files. These are based on a specific game's Sony serial number and CRC number. These are different, not just for each game, but for each version of each game. The Sony serial number will either start with SLUS for North American versions, SLES for European versions, or SLPS for Asian versions. CRC, meanwhile, stands for Cyclic Redundancy Check, a programming term that is outside the scope of this video. As an example, for the North American version of Monster Rancher 4, its Sony serial number is SLUS-20702, and its CRC is 0EF3697B. Therefore, my patch file must be named SLUS-20702 underscore 0EF3697B.patch. Literally any other name for that file will cause it to be unrecognizable to PCSX2. The good news is that the nightly versions of PCSX2 will automatically create a patch file with the correct name of your game if you don't already have one. After you boot your game, click Tools from the menu bar, then Edit Cheats. If this is grayed out, you just need to wait a few seconds for the game to fully boot. Once you click Edit Cheats, PCSX2 will look for a patch file for your game. If it can't find one, it'll prompt you to create one. When you do, a blank one will appear with the proper name in the proper subfolder. If you wish to manually name your patch file, it's much easier to find your game's Sony serial number and CRC in PCSX2 version 1.7 than it used to be. Simply right-click any game in your game library, then click Properties. Both the Sony serial number and the CRC will sit next to each other on the window that pops up. It's important to know how to find this information because many patch files, especially ones for older versions of PCSX2, will not be properly named. The website I often go to, gamehacking.org, never names the patch files correctly. Remember that patch files must have specific names and be placed in a specific subfolder. If you're skipping around the video, please see Part 4, What are SLUS and CRC, to correctly format the name of your patch file. You can open a patch file using any basic text editor, such as Notepad, even if PCSX2 isn't running. I recommend Notepad over something more feature-heavy because advanced word processors will often add other bits of text or file formatting that may break something. Your patch file should look something similar to this one for Monster Rancher 4. Any given cheat will have its name in brackets, followed by a description for the cheat, and then the actual code used to change specific variables. Most cheats only have one line of code, but others, like my Fill Book with All Monsters cheat, may use more. Note that each cheat must have a unique name. The name of the code and its description should be as brief as possible. You don't have to cram it all down to just a single word, but you should make it short. While the name of the cheat and the description are otherwise up to you, the actual codes, which always start with the phrase patch equals 1, should not be altered. If you make any edits to your patch file, be sure to save it with a simple Ctrl-S. If you're doing a lot of work or testing, you may want to have a backup patch file with a different name, just in case you need to change some things around. Keep in mind that PCSX2 will only recognize patch files with the specific names I talked about in Part 4. In older versions of PCSX2, you would need to directly edit this file to disable individual codes, but in the nightly versions, the process is much easier. Even if a game is not running, you can right-click a game in your PCSX2 game library, then click Properties, then click Cheats. Here, you'll need to enable cheats for the game, then you can select which cheats you wish to have active. All of these are drawn from the same patch file, but you can individually select or unselect which you want to use. You can also select or unselect cheats while a game is running without shutting it down or rebooting it. This may cause unstable behavior depending on the nature of the cheat and the timing of when you switched it on or off. If possible, it's best to leave your chosen cheats on or off for your entire session unless you're testing something specific. Speaking of that, some testing may be required depending on the cheats in question. Some cheats may work for new games while others may not. Some may work if you load a save state while others may not. There is no way to know exactly how a specific cheat will work until you try it, but generally cheats that only affect raw counters, like money counters or life counters, will work just fine in all circumstances. Cheats that affect systems, such as plot flags in a complicated RPG to ensure whether a character lives or dies, those may need to be active from the beginning to work. After you shut down a game, its cheat settings, including which are enabled and which aren't, will be carried over to your next session. If you only want to use cheats for a specific session, you may need to get into the habit of checking your cheat settings each time you boot a game. Older versions of PCSX2 had a global Enable Cheats toggle from the File menu. In the nightly version of PCSX2, all cheats are enabled on a game-by-game basis. You no longer need to turn them all on or all off, so if there are certain games you always cheat on and others you never cheat on, you will not need to change anything aside from the cheats properties in each individual game. I cannot troubleshoot every issue in a single video, but I can address some common questions asked in response to my previous video on this subject. If your patch file, or a specific cheat, is immediately crashing the game, the TLDR reason is because it's likely your patch file has conflicting cheats, badly written cheats, or cheats for a different version of the same game. The best way to figure out conflicts is to test one cheat at a time, then make sure it's compatible with all other cheats you want active. Most importantly, you'll want to run as few cheats at the same time as possible. I'm going to grossly oversimplify how patch files function in this part of the video. Please keep in mind that if you have any programming knowledge at all, this may annoy you. But my oversimplification is for those of you who may not know how programming works on its simplest level. Every number, or variable, in a video game is held in a section of RAM. A specific variable will have a specific section of RAM, and this is called a memory address. Think of it like your house address. There are many houses, but only one that contains you, and you can be found by your address. All memory addresses are written in hexadecimal, meaning a string of numbers or letters from 0 through 9 and A through F. Often, the number 0 and an X will be appended to the beginning of a memory address. So, let's say you're playing an RPG. Let's say the developer put the hero's hit points in memory address 123. Anytime he is hit, the game reads the number in memory address 123, then subtracts the damage and puts the new number back in memory address 123. What a patch file does is it forces the game to manipulate a memory address in a specific way. If a cheat for our RPG was to force the value in memory address 123 to always be 9,999 no matter what else is happening, you have just made the hero invincible and with maximum health. This sounds great, but here's the problem. A lot of patch files you find online, or if you haphazardly download all cheats from a site like gamehacking.org, will have multiple cheats that affect the same memory address. This is commonly found in cheats for money or experience points. Let's go back to our RPG, and the developer has put your gold in memory address 32A. Let's say you have two active cheats. One changes memory address 32A to 500,000, and another cheat that changes 32A to 1,000,000. Computer software can only do what it's told, and it will freak out if it gets self-conflicting instructions. In this case, our RPG will try to overwrite the same memory address with two different values, fail repeatedly, and crash. It's likely to just give us a black screen or refuse to load right from the beginning. Further, some games will have limits on variables based on their own programming, or different memory addresses for different variables. This is why cheats in one game will not work for others. In our RPG, the hero's hit points was stored in memory address 123, but another RPG may store it in memory address 100, another one may store it in memory address 777. In other cases, some games may have different limits on numbers, and it's possible they weren't programmed to deal with numbers outside that limit. One RPG may limit health to 999 hit points, another may limit it to 9,999 hit points, another may let you have 1,000,000 hit points. You can't know exactly how any given game is programmed simply based on prior knowledge of other games, and if a cheat forces a number to be outside its expected limits, the game may crash. This is why patience and testing are important, especially when you're making your own customized patch file. Even if other websites or people have assembled the cheats already, you'll need to be the one who selects which cheat you want to use and then make sure they don't conflict with each other. Even then, it's possible certain combinations of cheats, games, PCSX2 version, or even your computer hardware will simply not work. Not every failed cheat will crash the game, but I have found many cheats for many games out there that simply fail entirely, sometimes even just because of the source of the cheat. It is unfortunately part of the emulation process. As a disclaimer, I have no affiliation whatsoever with gamehacking.org and never have. It's my go-to site only because I do not know of any other site that serves as an entire repository of codes for basically every game in the PlayStation 2's entire library. Gamehacking.org is my go-to website for patch file codes. That said, the website is user-unfriendly for patch files themselves. As of recording this video, it properly formats patch files for PCSX2 version 1.7, but it does not properly name those files. Also, not all its cheats work, so testing is always required, but I have personally found it to be more useful than trying to hunt down patch files on random message boards. When you arrive at the website, there will be a search bar at the top center of the screen. Type the name of the game you're interested in there. Your first challenge will be selecting the proper version of the game. Let's say we search for Metal Gear Solid 2. We'll get hits not only for the American release of the game, but also an alternate version, multiple European versions, and even Disc 2 of Metal Gear Solid 3. When you click into any of those entries, you'll see an info box that includes its Sony serial number that I mentioned back in Part 4. This must match your game, because remember, every version of every game uses different codes, even for the same effect. Next, you'll see a place where you can download all the cheats in the list or specific cheats that you select with various formats. If you click the drop-down box next to Format, you can then select PCSX2 from the list. If you intend to download a patch file from here, I strongly recommend you select Checked in the top box and select which cheats you want rather than getting them all. Not only will getting all the cheats for a specific game make the file size larger than it needs to be, but it will require extra testing and editing on your part to get rid of conflicting cheats and cheats you likely won't use. In the codes lists, you may see master codes that are marked as must be on for certain GameShark or Pro Action replays. These codes can be ignored for patch files in PCSX2. I won't go into the technical reasons here, but as far as I'm aware, you never need the master codes in PCSX2. From there, you just need to check the boxes for the cheats you want. Pay attention to the source of the cheat, as some sources seem more reliable than others. I have generally found that codes by Codemaster are reliable and almost always work with PCSX2, while other sources have much less of a chance of working. Once you are finished selecting your cheats, scroll back to the top, then click the download button. The website will create a text file with the name of the game, followed by .patch. You can save this file to your PCSX2 cheats directory, then rename it and edit it to what PCSX2 requires. You can also download it as is, then copy and paste the text into another file. Let's do a full example of all the concepts. In this example, I own the North American version of Armored Core 3, and I've already turned it into an ISO file that my computer can read. First, I run PCSX2, then I'll right-click Armored Core 3 from my game library, then click Properties. Here, I'll check the Sony serial number, which is SLUS-20435. I make a note of this, close the Properties window, then boot the game. It does not matter whether I use fast boot or full boot. I'll wait a few seconds, then I go to Tools in the menu bar, and then I click Edit Cheats. I do not have a patch file yet for Armored Core 3, so PCSX2 prompts me to create a blank one. I say yes here, and it automatically opens the new blank file for me. Note that this step isn't fully necessary, but this way I know that the file is named exactly what it needs to be without me having to do it manually. I'm done with PCSX2 for a minute, so I just close it. Next, I'll open my web browser, and I navigate to gamehacking.org. I'll search for Armored Core 3, and 4 entries come up. I have the North American version, also designated as NTSC-U, so I'll click the second link. Now I make sure that the Sony serial number of my version, SLUS-20435, matches the info box. It does, so I'm on the correct page. Now to choose my cheats. For Armored Core 3, I'm only interested in infinite ammo and infinite health, which is called AP in that game. I ignore the master codes, and I could scroll through the list to find what I want, but there's a lot here. So instead I type Ctrl-F to bring up the Find feature on my web browser. Then I search for the word infinite. Now I have a few choices. I'm interested in the infinite ammo all weapons cheat, so I tick that box. And just below that are 2 codes for infinite AP, and they are from 2 different sources. One from Interact, and one from Codemaster. In my experience, Codemaster codes on gamehacking.org are reliable for PCSX2, but other sources are not. However, just in case it might work, I'm going to get both codes anyway, so I tick the boxes. With my 3 cheats selected, I scroll all the way to the top, and in the download box, I select PCSX2 patch format for checked cheats only. The file name selector here doesn't matter because I'm going to copy and paste the text after I download it. If I hadn't already made the blank file, I could download this file directly to the cheats directory, but instead I'll just download it as is to my downloads directory. Once the file is downloaded, I'll open it immediately. Here you can see it's formatted as it should be for PCSX2 version 1.7. I click into the text anywhere, then press Ctrl-A to highlight all the text. Then I'll press Ctrl-C to copy it, and now I'll click anywhere into the blank file and press Ctrl-V to paste it. The text of the downloaded patch file is now copied to the correctly named one that PCSX2 already made for me. I close and delete the downloaded one, then I need to do a little editing. The cheats all need descriptions written for them, and remember that each cheat must have a unique name. I call the Interact version Infinite APIA, and I call the Codemaster version Infinite APCM. Now I open PCSX2 again. From the game library, I right-click Armored Core 3, then go to Cheats. I click Enable Cheats near the top of the window, and my list of cheats from the patch file should be listed. If not, I can click Reload Cheats near the bottom of the window. Our 3 cheats are listed. I enable Infinite Ammo and Infinite APIA, but I'll leave Infinite APCM disabled because I don't want to run 2 cheats that might have the same effect because that will likely cause a crash. Now I'll run my game. Here in the tutorial level, I'm shooting my gun and my ammo count remains maxed out, so obviously that cheat is working. However, if I look at my AP, it's going down when I'm hit. As expected, Interact cheats are unreliable. Because I'm just testing things, and because my cheats are for counters rather than systems, I should be able to adjust the cheats without shutting the game down. In the menu bar, I go to Settings, then Properties, then Cheats. I'll first disable the Infinite APIA cheat, and then enable the Infinite APCM cheat. Then I close the Properties window. You can see the difference immediately, and as expected, the Codemaster cheat works right. My AP stays locked at 9,999, with brief moments of it going down when I'm hit. Both the Infinite Ammo and Infinite AP cheats are working just fine together too. To clean up my patch file, even with the game still running, I go to Tools in the menu bar, then Edit Cheats. That will open up my patch file again. I delete the non-working cheat, and clean up the title of the cheat that did work. With a final save, everything is done, and I'm ready to play Armored Core 3 with only the cheats that I want. If you have any questions regarding patch files, leave a comment below or DM me through Discord. I can't help everyone one-on-one, and I'm pretty busy with my other work, but I always try to reply to DMs and comments directed at me. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you again for another video.